UFC Vegas 71 is this Saturday, and we have your full card predictions. I'm going to be breaking down every single fight on the card. I'm going to let you guys know which favorites might get upset, which underdogs you should take, and which picks I'm most confident in. Definitely make sure you guys stay tuned for my main event prediction. I think that a few points I point out might surprise you, and my overall pick will probably shock you. The first fight of the night is Carlston Harris versus Abubakar Nurmogomedov. This is a really good and close fight on paper. Both of them are strikers, believe it or not. I know Nurmagomedov's last name makes you think he's Khabib, but he's actually not a wrestling dominant fighter. Both of them prefer to stand on their feet. Both of them are quite talented at it. Carlston has a nasty submission game to him and has fought some absolute beasts. His recent loss in the UFC is to Shavkat, who fought last weekend against Jeff Neal. I mean, you can't fault him too much for that. Whereas Abubakar, he has a great record, but he hasn't fought the same caliber of opponents yet. So when you put these two guys together on paper, again, you have striker versus striker, but you give Carlston the reach advantage, the height advantage, the jiu-jitsu advantage. Even though Abubakar hasn't used his wrestling too much in his career, I would bet he still has some. Given that he is in Dagestan, I know he's not at the wrestling dominant gym, but I'm sure they would still make him do some sort of wrestling defense. So I'm not too worried about him getting taken down, but as far as a striking head-to-toe match, I don't think he's quite a match for Carlston. And if you think about the styles, right, let's say these guys are striking. Let's say Nurmagomedov goes for a takedown. Well, guess what? Carlston's also a great jiu-jitsu expert, so if he gets taken down, I trust Carlston to be able to maybe find a submission during a panic takedown, or if things get tough, I could totally see Carlston making a takedown or getting some sort of standing guillotine from the clinch. That would be quite awesome and quite rare. I doubt that actually happens, but my pick is going to be Carlston Harris. Again, this is a banger. I wouldn't bet heavy on this one, but gun to my head, I'm picking Carlston Harris. Especially going from Shavkat all the way to Abubakar in your very next fight, right? Those are very different caliber of opponents, so I definitely think that he's learned from that and he can get this one done. Moving on up, we have Tyson Nam versus Bruno Silva. Now this one is another very, very tricky one to pick because both of them have KO power in their hands. Both of them have shown to be knocking people out recently. I mean, you have Tyson coming off a first round finish over Ode Osborne, a really good striker. And you have Bruno Silva coming off of 2 KO victories in the UFC over not so good competition. But still, you watch those fights, my man absolutely has power in his hands. And the type of striker Bruno Silva is, he will let you sort of push the pace to him, lure you in, do a little feint, and then land that huge hook or that huge straight right that can absolutely change the way the fight is going. So you look at his opponent, you go, is he up for that test? Can he handle that? And then you see his age. His opponent's 39 years of age and they're fighting at 125 pounds. So that right there is a huge red flag. To be good and at the top at that division, speed is most important, right? And speed is one of the first things that goes with age. I believe Tyson still has the power. I would give him the technique advantage, but I think Bruno Silva is either going to be able to finish Tyson in this fight or he's going to be able to outpace him, right? He's the younger guy. He's the hungrier guy. Tyson's had his whole career already, right? Usually when you take those types of things and you put it into pen and paper and you put it on 125 pounds, the younger guy is going to almost always be the better bet and the better person to pick. I just can't pick a 39-year-old 125 pounder. I think the odds are so swayed in this one because Tyson's fought the tougher competition recently and that win over Ode. But if you take that aside, you look at this matchup, it's going to be harder for Tyson to predict because he's not fighting a guy who's as predictable and as consistent moving wise as Ode was. There's a lot more thinking he's going to have to do, a lot more exchanges in the firefight that are random and less predictable, and I just give the edge to the younger guy in that one. So moving on up, we have Vitor Henry versus Tony Gravley. So Victor's the fave. He's a good striker. He's got the size advantage over Tony. He mixes in his kicks well. He is 35 years of age, so it's a little bit concerning, though it's not like he's 38, 39, 40 where it gets ridiculous. And he has been through some absolute dogfights and wars recently, so you can know that Victor's probably going to be able to handle most of what Tony brings him in this fight. However, when you look on the side of Tony, he just took one of the Basharat bros all the way to a decision, and those guys are very talented. I know one of them had a little bit harder of a test this past weekend than he was expecting. He still got the win, and this Basharat brother is actually better than the one we saw in the octagon this weekend, and he took him to a decision, right? Basharat was a huge favorite going into that fight, and Tony made that an absolute dogfight. He made it hard on him. He showed he has heart. And another thing I want to point out, if you go look at Tony's victory before that, he was getting beat up in the first round, and you know how he won that fight? By showing heart, by being able to take it on points, by being able to outpace his opponent, land more volume. and most importantly, take a lot of damage coming his way and show that he's not going to crumble and give up on you. So you have Vitor. His last loss is to Raphael Assuncao, who is way over the hill, and he was able to beat him on decision, right? Versus Tony, a guy who can finish you, can take you on to decision, has proven he has the heart, the cardio, the pace to go to decision. I think if Tony doesn't get finished here by Vitor within the first or second round, he'll very quickly start to take away with it. The third round will be all Tony, I believe. And for the underdog odds that you can get this one at, I think Tony is a really good dog stab. This one's dog or pass in my opinion. My pick is going to be Tony Gravley. Next you have Ariane Lipski versus JJ Aldrich. This one's a pretty easy fight. I'm going to be taking JJ Aldrich in this one. Ariane Lipski is a savage in there. She likes to fight, clearly. She goes in, swangs and bangs. Either she's getting KO'd or she's KOing you. That's how she fights. She doesn't like to go to the distance. High pressure, high pace. Isn't able to last a full decision and win confidently. She usually loses when she goes to decision. Her victories usually come in the first or second round via finish. And I wouldn't say she's the most technical striker. So you have her going up against a pretty good technical striker in Lipski, someone who's coming off their first loss to Erin Blanchfield, a really, really talented fighter, so you can't fault her for that. I'm only going to think that loss is hungering her to make sure she does not lose this next fight to the girl who's gone 50% win, 50% loss in her last 5 fights. So I do not think Lipski's going to be losing this one. I think Lipski's going to take advantage of the technical flaws in Ariane's game. And I just see Lipski being able to outpoint her, get the decision. If not, maybe Ariane gasses trying to go for it and Lipski maybe gets a finish here. But wouldn't surprise me. I would definitely be taking Lipski by decision in this one. Next, we have Mario Bautista versus Guido Cainetti. You got to go Mario Bautista in this one. I mean, the odds are so wide, it's fairly obvious. But just so you guys understand why. Mario Bautista, a pressure wrestler, has some striking. He's an absolute workhorse of a fighter. He will not stop putting the pressure on you and going for a finish versus like a 42-year-old man who's got some wins lately, not against great competition, and his wins are against people who only want to strike with him, right? So what's going to happen when you have somebody who's not really trying to play that game? He's just trying to get you in, get you out of there, not trying to get smacked up. He's seen you got some lucky wins recently. I do not see Mario Bautista really having any trouble at all in this fight, so I wouldn't bet it, just the lines are crazy, and we saw what happened with Shevchenko last week. But Mario Bautista for the win on this one. Next we have Josh Fremd versus Sedriques Dumas. Now this was a little bit of a tough one for me. Originally I was thinking Josh Fremd's side. He does have more experience against higher caliber fighters. Sedriques is relatively green at only a few years in the sport. But you go look at who they are as people, right? Sedriques is a savage. You watch some of his fights, he's never been the distance. He gets guys out of there by the second round, usually in the first round. Not only always striking, he's had guys push him against the cage and he'll get his crazy guillotine on him and choke them out. He's one of those guys able to get the finish. You can trust him to get the finish. The scary part is, how will he do if it goes the distance? If he doesn't get the finish and he has to go a little longer, is he going to fade? Is he going to give up? I don't think he will. I don't think he'll give up on us. He's just coming off a Contender Series victory, not over a super great opponent, but it's still impressive. And this is a massive opportunity for him to change his life. He usually fights at light heavyweight. He's now coming down to middleweight, which tells me that for the first time in really his career, he's taking dieting, he's taking all of that seriously and fighting at his most optimal weight class. Going up against Josh Fremd, who was submitted by Tresean Gore, lost to Anthony Hernandez, has never won in the UFC. He is a decent fighter when you watch him, but he isn't showing to have the best track record. Now there's this side you could look at this and say, well, Josh is due for his UFC win and Dumas is due for his UFC debut loss, right? And I can understand that. I could see why some people might say that, but I'm not saying that. I'm picking Dumas here. I think he's going to send Josh bye-bye, get him a job at Amazon, because he's going to need to deliver Dumas his belt in 5 years. That was a little bit cheesy of a joke. You get what I'm saying. Dumas for the win. On up we have Raphael Assuncao versus Davey Grant. I'm going to be picking Davey Grant in this one. My man's an absolute G. He can take a punch. He can give a punch. He has a high pace. He's got good range. He's at the range advantage, the height advantage in this matchup. Raphael Assuncao is coming out of 4 losses out of his last 5. He's like 40 years old. This shouldn't be this close to odds-wise. In fact, I would say Davey Grant's probably my lock of the night, which scares me because whenever I say those words, it's like cursed, so keep that in mind. But Davey Grant really should get this one done. For the odds are a little crazy. I'm picking him with confidence. I see him being able to win wherever the fight goes. If he wants to outstrike Raphael, I see that. If he needs to get into a brutal war, a dogfight, which Davey Grant usually does, I see him doing that. Out of his last 6 fights, Davey Grant has only lost to Chito Vera and Adrian Yanez. Adrian Yanez is a huge prospect, a great striker. He was able to get the decision over Davey Grant. He couldn't even put him away. And not to mention, that was a split decision. So Davey Grant was able to hang in there with one of the best prospects for striking, go to a split decision in a striking match. against a young, hungry prospect. And now he's going into another striking match against an old man. This one seems like a pretty easy pick. I'm going Davey Grant. He's going to get this one done. Next, we have Carl Williams versus Lukasz Brzeski. This is another one of those ones I went back and forward on because Lukasz has been around in MMA for way longer, like a decade. Karl only started 2 years ago, but looking at their records, you would not think that, right? Because they're pretty much the same record. So liked fighting and it paid you and that was kind of your job. You'd think you would fight more than 8 times in a decade. So I know he's done fairly good. Both have fought some pretty bad competition. They're not fighting anybody to really notable to boost that record up. So that being said, I wanted to give this to Lukasz because he should have more advantages in mixed martial arts, right? He should be the better grappler. You've seen him use some grappling in the past, though he's mostly a striker. And Karl is just so green. Like, how can he possibly beat this guy with all that more experience? But where you can see I'm leading to this, I'm picking Karl. He's training at American Top Team. I think he just wants it more, dude. He's in there. He's fought like 4 times a year for the last 2 years, murking people, putting them away, got some submissions, showed some good wrestling defense or submission defense, has shown to be able to knock people out. This is at heavyweight, and he wants it more. So I think he's going to be able to get this one done. I wouldn't go with the other guy. I know he looks jacked and probably like he is the typical MMA fighter, but maybe he should stick to doing that and doing some hypertrophy workouts because it doesn't seem like he actually likes fighting that much. We're going Carl Williams on this one. Moving on up, we have Vitor Petrino versus Anton Turkalj. So for this one, you watch some of their highlights recently, and you'd be very inclined to go the Petrino side. He's very explosive. He's a very scary guy to watch fight, right? Like, he can knock anybody out at any time. He's just shown to do that. But then you look at, again, who is he fighting, right? And I go through his record, I'm digging. I'm looking, I'm like, okay, that one guy's decent. You go one fight before that, my man fought this guy named the Tsunami. That should go down in jail as an illegal assault. This guy has never won a fight. He looks like your pizza delivery driver. And 2 or 3 fights ago, that's who Vitor was fighting. So yeah, he does have an impressive record and he does knock people out. But has he ever been tested nearly the way that his opponent's going to test him in this fight? I don't think so. Whereas Anton, he hasn't fought crazy good fighters either, but he's definitely fought the better competition, has done just as well, can handle himself in the striking department. It's not like he's, going to be scared or alienated in that area. He knows how to strike. That's his game as well. And he also has knockout power. And guess what? He also has some submissions in wrestling, so I got to go with Anton. I know there's a little bit of hype on Petronio's name. I really could be wrong on this one. I could see him getting knocked out too. Vitor's a scary dude. Again, he's knocking out pizza delivery drivers, but that punch still hurts regardless. So if he lands it, anything can happen, right? But I'm going to take the more trusted fighter on this one. Moving on up, you have Said Nurmogomedov versus Jonathan Martinez. Now, Said Nurmagomedov's an interesting one. I watched his last fight live. This guy had to go through such a grappling war with the other fighter. I don't remember his name. He was so close to losing that fight so many times, but he ended up getting the win to the point where I believe I had him on a parlay and I was like walking out the door because I was like, oh, there's no way he's going to win this fight. He's getting manhandled for the most part. I mean, not completely manhandled, but back and forward, but mostly on the losing side of it, right? Ended up getting the submission, but what did that show me? Man has heart, man can grapple. Okay, he's not a primary grappler. I know you'd think that with the last name. They have like a kickboxing camp out there and they have a wrestling side. He's on the kickboxing side. I know they still do wrestling, as you could tell in that last fight of his. So what I'm getting at is he's mostly a kickboxer, but he has grappling, he has wrestling in his back pocket. And when he was about to lose the last fight, you know how he won? With a submission. So he got to that submission and he did what he needed to do to win. Going up against a guy who's a really good striker, hits hard, he has the range advantage. If this is a kickboxing match, I wouldn't pick Said in this. But this is not a kickboxing match. I'm going to pick Said in this. I think they will engage in striking for majority of the fight until Said believes, oh shit, I might not win in striking. And he'll do what he has to do. He'll get him down. He'll get a submission, or he'll get him down and win a decision. Said Nurmagomedov will get this one done. I've seen a lot of other MMA creators pick it on the opposite side on this one. I respect their decision. It'd probably be more entertaining and better for the UFC. However, the way I see this fight playing out, Said's shown he's going to do what he's got to do, and I think he'll be able to do it this time too. So Said Nurmagomedov for the win. Moving on up, we have Ricardo Ramos versus Austin Lingo. The odds on this one are wild. They're absolutely wild, okay? And I know it's because Ricardo has fought the tougher competition. He's been around in the UFC for longer. He's a wild striker. He's got submission game. So you could see people being like, oh, that guy's going to wipe out this guy who hasn't fought that great a competition, right? And they probably are right. They probably are right. But for the odds on this one, just from a betting perspective, you have to go Lingo. If you're gonna do this, it's a dog or pass, because Lingo is such a live dog in this. I'm actually taking him as my pick. The reason being, he's a striker who has some KO power, lots of finishes on his record, but his last 3 fights he's gone to decision. So he's been pushed to go all 15 minutes. He's had his cardio tested, he's had his chin tested, he's had his skills refined. That's a lot of time in the octagon to just improve and get better, right? And who he's been fighting is good strikers. He's been fighting wild and good strikers who have some submission game. Very similar opponents to the one he's going up against here. Like, take his last fight against Luis Saldana, for example. Luis Saldana came out and hurt him badly. Pretty bad. Won on all 3 judges' scorecards in the first round, right? You know how our guy responded here? You know how Lingo responded? He came back, put the pace on him, used his clinch work, started landing more volume, and he took that fight on decision. He ended up beating the better striker who he was an underdog against. The very last fight he did. And then you have him going up against Ricardo Ramos, who you go look at his last fights. He's 2 for 2 in his last 4. Better competition, which is why he's such a favorite, but he isn't exactly shown to be a guy who will win at all costs, right? Like, he wants to win. Every fighter wants to win, right? But how effective is his game plan? And it was effective for the most part in his career, but once that seal has been broken, a lot of fighters turn into these 50-50 fighters. You see it way more often than you see people bounce back and go on huge win streaks. You just notice the win streak ones more because you won't hear about the other guys because they're cut and removed from the UFC, right? It's kind of how they keep the best of the best fighting there, and that's why you have some fighters who will get kicked from the UFC, come back years later and be successful later. I think Austin Lingo gets this one done. Next, you have Nikita Krylov versus Ryan Spann. This was a main event that was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago, but Krylov actually got sick during the main event. So sick, like a stomach bug, that he had to pull out from the event and cancel it literally right then and there. So they've rescheduled it for this event now. But you gotta wonder, like, would that affect anything, right? For one, it probably piss off Spann. And being angry can help you or can also hurt you in a fight, right? I'm not expecting that to weigh in too much into this fight. But what I am thinking could happen is, when you're sick that bad that you need to call off the fight, is 2 weeks enough time to really fully recover? And then you have him going up against Spann, who's a bigger man, has wrestling, has jiu-jitsu, not the same level of jiu-jitsu, not as good of a striker, but much more power. And it's hard, like, every time you got to get to that big dude, you're at risk of taking bombs from Ryan Spann, right? I think if Krylov is successful in getting Spann down, there's a very good chance that he could submit him and win right then and there. But I think getting to Spann and getting him down is going to be very hard for him. He might not be 100%, which was the point I was making earlier. And I'm picking Ryan Spann on this one, guys. I'm picking the underdog. I know people might think I'm crazy for that. I picked him last time too. I think Ryan Spann's going to get this one done. He possesses more of a threat on the feet. He has wrestling. He has submissions if he needs it. I think he'll avoid the wrestling. He'll do his best to keep it on the feet, and he'll be such more of a KO threat to the man who was just incredibly sick 2 weeks ago and gone through 2 weight cuts. And you pissed off Spann by canceling that second. I don't know, man. I'm picking Ryan Spann. This is going to be a good fight though. I hope I'm right on this one. I would love to be right on this one specifically, and I would love to hear what you think on this one specifically, but I am picking Ryan Spann. I know Krylov is a really good fighter. Moving on up to the co-main event, we have Alexander Volkov versus Alexander Romanov. So we got 2 Alexanders going head to head. Dana said only one of you can remain. The other one is getting shipped back off to Siberia after this event to go fight in some other league, the Eagle FC over there. You're not allowed back. So stylistically in this matchup, Volkov is way bigger. He's a good kickboxer. Romanov is a really good tactician with submissions. I know you wouldn't think that based on his last fight with Tybura. He lost on decision. He got very tired in that fight and wasn't able to implement his game plan the way he should. But before that, he was completely undefeated. He's the younger fighter. I know he has a little bit of a size disadvantage, but styles make fights. I think he will be able to get this one down. I think that loss is going to really motivate him to do anything he can to improve, right? He was already good before, but hit the cardio a little more, train your takedown success a little bit more. And I think he's going to implement that in this because it would be a stupid game plan. I'm going to go kickbox the guy who's 5 inches taller than me, is like the best kickboxer in heavyweight right now aside from Cyril Gane. No, he's going to go in and use his strength. He's going to grapple, and Volkov is shown to have a big problem with people who are specialists at grappling. So for that reason, I'm going to be picking Alexander Romanov to get this one done. At last, we are here. The main event. We have Petr Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili. Now everybody is picking Petr Yan that I've seen so far. I can understand it. Petr Yan was known as like the best bantamweight like 2 years ago, before his first incident with Aljo where he illegally kneed him. Then he fought Aljo again and lost legitimately, so you can say he's no longer the champion there. And then he was expected to buzzsaw through Sean O'Malley. Like, he was a huge favorite in that fight. Nobody thought Sean really had a good chance in it because Petr Yan is just that good, right? Not really. Sean won the fight. You can make an argument it was very close, but did anybody really expect it to be as close as it was or for Sean to actually win? No. So the point I'm being is sometimes you can get caught up in these fighters and you can, just because they have a good run and you could think they're invincible. Look at Shevchenko, right? No one is invincible. Sometimes the better game plan can come in and just kind of cancel out what you like to do and what you're good at. What is Petr Yan's game plan? He likes to go in, start a little slow, use mainly boxing and leg kicks to read you, time you, counter punch you, beat you up on the feet. He's not a big offensive wrestler. He does have good defensive wrestling. He's shown that in the past. But that's his overall game plan. I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that, right? What's Merab's game plan? He's going to pressure you. He's going to aggressively wrestle you. He's only going to strike just enough to make you worry about the strikes a little bit, to get close to you, clinch you, and get you down. Will Yan be able to get back up? Absolutely. You know what Merab's going to do? He's going to take him down again. He's going to keep trying, right? And that type of fight is a very different fight to fight against than most of the fights you're going to have in the UFC. Specifically Petr Yan, if you look across his career, he's beating up Corey Sandhagen, he's beating up Jose Aldo, he's beating out Uriah Faber. Great fighters. None of them are specialists at wrestling, right? First time he goes up against a specialist at grappling / wrestling, Aljo, he did beat him that first fight. I'll give him that. He should have beat him that fight. But how did the second fight look? Aljo was able to take off an entire round by just laying on this guy, holding him from his back, backpacking him essentially on the ground, and otherwise won that fight entirely based on grappling and footwork. So then you take that, you go, okay, who's a better wrestler in the division or is shown to be more persistent with wrestling in the division? Merab. He's not a better grappler, not a better submission artist, but I would say he's more persistent and better at getting to opponents and just getting a hold of them and not letting go. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys. He gets to you, he's not going to let you go. He's either going to hold you up against the fence, do clinch work, or he's going to get you to the ground and try and score a little bit there too. He's not the biggest submission guy. Submissions are when you actually have the biggest chance of getting out of positions, right? They always say position over submission. So when you have Merab who's really position focused and he's really persistent, going up against Yan, who has really never had to deal with that exact type of fight, I kind of think it's almost like the perfect storm for Yan to take another L here. I personally want Yan to win. He's a really entertaining fighter to watch. He is the better, more well-rounded fighter here, I would agree. Definitely bigger name value for the sport. I'll say it again, way more entertaining to watch. But styles make fights, and you have the consistent, persistent wrestler versus the well-rounded fighter who has shown good takedown defense, but is also shown to have that broken and lost because of that 9 months ago. I'm a little shocked at the odds on this one. I think it's because people are looking at this like Petr Yan needs a win so bad. There's no way he can possibly lose 4 out of his last 5, right? He's that good. And I would say that doesn't really matter, sadly, right? Like, it's styles make fights, and he shouldn't have had that loss on his record to Aljo. Illegal knee sucks. That's why that one's there. He lost fair and square due to grappling against Aljo the second time. He lost against Sean. Arguable, definitely arguable, but he did lose, and I mean that one's not really relevant to this case. Merab's nowhere near like a Sean, a completely different fight. Not impossible for him to lose, and he's not exactly getting the huge judge favors, right? Let's be honest. Going up against Merab, a guy who lives to win on decision, is hard to put down and will not stop coming at you. So all this being said, guys, I'm picking Merab Dvalishvili to take the win on this one. I really hope I call this. I would love it to get this one right. It's easy to pick Yan in this. If I were to come out here and just say what is quote unquote most likely to happen, I would just say Petr Yan. I mean, you look at the odds, you look at what most people are saying online. There's a lot of consensus to pick Yan, and that way if I'm wrong, I'm in the group with everybody else. But I'm gonna stick my neck out here, guys. I'm gonna pick Merab. There's a world where I'm wrong on this and Yan gets a finish, or Yan is able to just stop the takedowns enough and hurt him more while he's trying to it, and you have Merab sort of just chasing him around, getting punched in the face. Total way that could happen. However, I do think Merab will be able to get to him. I think he'll be able to inflict his game plan just more than Petr Yan. And I think Merab will win I was going to say 29-28, but that's not what it would be. 48-47 in this one. That's my prediction. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Like I said earlier in the video, I expect some people to disagree with me on that one. So let's have a debate in the chat. I would love to hear your points why, and I would also love to hear what you think of my points. As you can tell by my channel name, I'm really just a big MMA fan, just like all you guys. It's why I started making these videos. And honestly, last week was our first fight week on the channel, and it was awesome. I had a lot of fun, a lot of positive comments. I'm glad you guys are enjoying what I'm doing. It motivates me to be consistent and keep improving what I'm doing. So if you guys like what I'm doing, you want to see more fight week content, I have a ton coming out this week, and you like my predictions, you like my vibe, hit that subscribe button. We're almost at 100 subs already. It'd be sweet to hit that sometime this week. If not, it's all good. But most importantly, Let me know what you guys think about my picks in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.